Hi everyone, it's Jackie at Spare Room Studio, and today I'm going to colour in this book called Fantastic Zoo. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name because I'll probably get it terribly wrong, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. So I don't see this book on Instagram or YouTube very often, and I've had it a while and I've only coloured a couple of pages in it myself. It is quite thin paper. I do believe it's going to bleed through quite easily. However, I am going to attempt to do some watercolour type effects in this book, and if you would like to have a flick through of this book, you'd like me to do a flick through of this book, please let me know and I will do that for you. But I think I might do this whale page here, and if I can break the spine a little bit here just to open that book a bit flatter, I think I will do this one. It's got an off-white cream sort of paper. It's a very nice paper, but it's not the thickest, and hopefully I won't bleed through too badly, but if it does, so be it. But what I would like to try using today is the 72 double-ended fibretip pens by Staedtler. They're water-based marker pens, and I would like to give them a go with a watercolour technique. Just going to put some pieces of paper towel down so I don't ruin too many pages. And I'm going to use the plate and a water brush and lift the colours off, and if I don't have the right colours or I find these are bleeding too badly, I do have my Crayola Super Tips as a standby as well. I'm sorry, I will probably clear my throat a little bit because I've got a bit of a frog in the throat going on. I think that could work as a double page spread, but whether it's actually meant to be or not, I'm not 100% sure, but let's jump in and get started. So I'm going to do this as a blue whale, and it's a little bit tricky to know with the composition whether that's meant to be the top of the water or not, because there are some fish there. So we'll have to just dive in, so to speak, and let's see what happens anyway. So I've had a smaller set of these markers before. I think it might have been 48 possibly, something like that, and I really enjoyed them. So I started to have quite a few colours run dry, and so I bought this set as a standby a while back, and I haven't used the bigger set just yet. So if you're not familiar with the markers, they are a double-ended marker with a fine tip down one end, and very much like a Crayola Super Tip down the other end. And the fine tip would be good for some of these smaller details in here. Let's have a look. On the back it just says double-ended fibre tip pens for colourful sketching, drawing, illustration and writing. Made in Germany, I think. No, made in Italy. And as I say, I bought these a while ago and they've just been sitting as my spares, so I don't remember how much I paid for them, which is irrelevant really, depending on where you are in the world. And it would have been Amazon Australia that I bought these ones from. I had bought my original set, my smaller set, in store here in my hometown in Big W. So anyone who's from Australia, I'm not sure if they still sell them because I haven't looked at Big W's colouring supplies for a while. but that's where I got them from. So I'm just going to do, jump in and do like a watercolour effect in the background. I'm just going to try and get this paper to stay in place. So I'm going to start with this lower section, and it's going to be quite tricky to keep some of these fish and smaller things sorry, I'm having a hard time with words today. So that it doesn't bleed over them is what I'm trying to say, because they're very small. So far we've got a nice effect here already, that these markers are indeed looking very watery and they're bleeding quite profusely. And that's what I want it to do. I want this very much watery, wet in wet sort of effect is what I'm hoping for. I am using quite a lot of water again already. I've looked at that back picture and I'm happy to sacrifice that if need be, just so that I've got one page in this book where I have attempted this technique, and if it goes terribly, then I will not use it again, but I'm hoping that it will work nicely without too much bleed through, and then it can be a book that gets worked in a little bit more often. Because at the moment my focus really has been on these watery techniques, and I've had a few of you comment that you're being inspired to get the Crayola super tips, which is great. I'm sorry about that phone ringing. It will go to an answering machine, so we'll just have to ignore it. It must be the rotation for the call centres to be ringing, because I've had several today and they just hang up. They don't say anything, they just hang up. So in my household, if you don't speak, the answering machine gets the call, and if you don't speak, I don't pick up. Simple as that. So friends and family know that if they're calling and the answering machine will 99% of the time be on, that they need to speak and let me know it's them, or else it doesn't get picked up. I've decided what I will do is I'll treat these lines not as boundary lines, but they're just patterns, because that's what it feels like to me, that's what they are. So it's not meant to be the surface of the water there. I think it's just a decorative line for decorative purposes, like a almost like a Zen doodly sort of design that they've got in these pictures. And what I'm going to do there is just drop some clean water into that area. And I'm not sure if we're in close enough for you to see that, but where the clean water is moving, it's pushing all the pigment away with it, and I'm going to get quite a hard line where that has gone, and that's actually what I'm wanting. So, and then up here it will be quite random. This is more like a sky perhaps up here, because there's a little house on the top. So I'm just going to grab a different blue again And I just want that to sort of be all random and washy. And at this point, some of these smaller things are going to be bled over, but if I keep the colours pale enough, I can reinstate the details by using a darker colour or some sort of metallic gel pen or glaze pen or something, you know, acrylic paint pen. Something that's going to be more opaque can come back in there at a later stage, but if I keep it light enough, I'm going to keep my options open for what it is I can use to put some of those little details, those little patterns back in. This is quite a pretty book. As I have mentioned before, I don't recall seeing it too often on YouTube or Instagram. I do like to watch A Cluttered Life on YouTube, and A Cluttered Life showed this book, and they had used some, I think it was markers in this book, and really pretty. And I really do like their style a lot. A Cluttered Life has some amazing coloured pages, so I recommend you check the channel out if you haven't already seen it. And what I'm thinking with some of this watercolour-y type effect is that we don't need to cover the whole page. I feel like this random splashy, blobby, you know, lovely randomness suits this style of illustration. And also with this technique, it's not about having neat edges or preciseness. It's the actual randomness of it all is what is its selling point for me. I hope that makes sense to you, because I seem to have a little bit of difficulty the last few days in stringing some sentences together that make sense, and also convey the information that I'm trying to convey to you. I don't know what it is, but it could be stress. I have got a low level of stress sort of in life in general at the moment, with some things that are going on and coming up. So sometimes when I'm feeling stressed, I feel like I don't articulate myself very well. My speaking becomes stilted, and particularly trying to think and create and talk all at the same time at the moment is proving to be just a little bit challenging. So somebody else commented they'd come across the channel by accident. I think it was the lovely randomness of YouTube algorithms had, if you might be able to see here that where I'm blotting the colour up or the water up there, these striations and lines in my paper towel are actually leaving marks on the paper, but that can look quite interesting in itself as well. And yes, so the lovely YouTube algorithm had brought my video up to someone to watch, and I think it was the Ken Matsuda rabbit page, and she was mildly horrified at the, I think it was a she, I'm sorry if I've got that wrong, but mildly horrified at the amount of water that I was sloshing about. But I'm really thoroughly enjoying playing with this watery technique at the moment, so you're going to see a bit more of it, I think, because it's so quick and it's satisfying. I'm enjoying it and I'm finding it satisfying. So now I've also had a few of you say that you're going to experiment with your supplies a little bit more and digging out all different sorts of water-based supplies to play with, and I'm thinking of you, Joe, at 120 Colours. Essentially, my technique will work with just about anything that's water-based. So I've got this little set here of Neocolour 2s that was very kindly gifted to me by Axic Fumbles, so thank you for that. And even if I work with these, I would still, let me just see what colour would I do this. Well, maybe this one. If I work with something like a Neocolour 2, I'm still going to wet the area, and I'm going to pick up from the tip because I don't like rubbing these onto a board and picking it up. That I've tried it and I don't like it. I also don't like working directly onto the paper and diluting it from the paper because that doesn't work how I want it to either. And so I've wet my paper, I've got a really wet brush, and I'm touching that colour into the wet paper. So if you've got Neocolour 2s and you're wondering whether it will work with this technique, the answer is yes. You can use them in exactly the same way, but you will see that it's not bleeding the same and it's not going to give us the same result when it's dry. And neither should you expect it to, because this is a water-soluble wax pastel. It's not a water-based pigment dye or pigment or dye ink like these markers are made with. It's made of something completely different again. So you're going to get a different look with it, but you can work with it in the same way. All it requires is some experimentation. And let's just see what it blends like, because that paper looks like it's already starting to dry off. I can overlay other colours into there as well. I can also wet the tip of the Neocolour 2 and just with that damp brush, brush it onto dry paper. Okay, so these do not need to be scribbled onto, an expensive board and colour lifted off that way either if you don't wish to. If you want to, that's all well and good, but if you don't want to, you don't have to use it that way. Okay, it can be used this way. Like I would with the watercolour pencils or the Inktense pencils, you just purely lift that colour from the tip and then apply it to the paper. So I just wanted to show you that. if that's helpful, Joe. What else have I got here to hand? Anything? Oh, something else I wanted to show you was that somebody asked me if metallic markers would do the same thing as this. My quick answer, I think, would be yes. I think they should be able to be used in the same sort of manner. Okay, what I'm looking for isn't here on the table. Where is it? That is annoying. I wanted some jelly rolls. Here we go. Let's see what I've got in my loose little pot. Not really the colours I wanted, but so let me start again. Lost my train of thought. So an acrylic marker, glitter marker, or a glitter marker, sorry. If it's water-based, you should be able to have a play with it the same way. Whether the results are exactly the same, I'm not sure, because I don't have any glitter markers to play with and show you. But something that I have found is that the good old jelly roll Moonlight can be used the same way. And you see how that's all bleeding out? So I applied the jelly roll Moonlight to the dry paper, and it's bleeding into that water. So if I can do that with a jelly roll Moonlight, I could probably do something similar with a jelly roll metallic, which I don't want to try right now because I'm not sure where I'm going to want metallic. So that's a jelly roll with a smaller nib. It's not bleeding quite so well as the bigger nib, but it is bleeding. Okay, so let's go in for a penny, in for a pound. I've got jelly roll metallics here. Let's see what a jelly roll metallic does. Maybe down here through the tail. So that's a jelly roll metallic. Just clean that brush off. And you can see how the colour is blending out. It has left quite a lot of marks there, that pen marks that haven't dissolved. Looks a little bit shiny, but we might have to wait until it's dry. So the base colour of the jelly roll metallic, the jelly roll Moonlight and so on, does bleed with water. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's something to keep in mind for even if you don't wish to work with them for this effect or these colours. But if you've coloured in your page and you've put some metallic or jelly roll Moonlight or whatever onto your page for effect, and then you come back with water later, you can accidentally make it bleed. So just keep that in mind. So we'll see how that dries as to whether it leaves any sparkly, metallic look anywhere else. But that colour is going quite a long way. Okay, so that's worth keeping in mind as well. So sometimes, you know, you have these pens and markers and so on in your collection that you don't think of them as colouring materials, or you're thinking of them only as putting, you know, finishing touches on there. Sorry, I'm just checking on Mr. Hamish. You know, you may buy your gel pens just really for finishing touches and dry work, but in a pinch they can be used as a watery type effect as well. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's keep going with the Staedtler markers here. And I'm looking for something that's going to be quite a lot deeper, more like an indigo. This actually looks more like a Prussian blue actually. So I'm going to continue on with the watery effects there. So this might be a video that you might have to mute me if I become too annoying. So what I'm doing here is just using two colours just to see how those colours blend into each other and how they will dry. And at the end I'll use some of the markers directly onto the paper as well, I think, to put some deeper colour in there. So I'm just blending in those areas where the jelly roll didn't quite dissolve all of its strokes, pen strokes out. But it will be interesting to see how that dries up. So I personally like these Staedtler double-ended fibretip pens. What I did find with working with them directly into books though was that they do bleed through a lot of different types of paper on a regular basis with not a lot of work. So I've mostly been colouring onto the paper directly and then blending them with the wet water brush. So it will be interesting to see how this one dries up working with it this way, because the working directly onto the paper with the pens and then trying to dissolve them, you know, dissolve the pen strokes, did result in quite a bit of bleed through. I used them a lot in my Kirby books and got quite a bit of bleed through in there. I think I also used them in possibly Camilla Derrico books and it bled through in there. They will most certainly bleed through Amazon paper, without a doubt. So do keep that in mind if you decide to give these pens a go. 72 colours is not a huge range of colours, but if you have a look at them, they've got a pretty decent range of each colour group. So I feel like they're a pretty versatile pen myself. And I like the fact that they have the fine tip for doing the small detailed areas, and then the bigger tip, which is very much like the Crayola super tip. You can use it on its side and get quite big strokes for covering a background, for example, pretty quickly. So I do need to wait for this to dry now before I can do too much else to it, unfortunately. What I might try to do is very carefully do some of these small details with the fine liner without putting too much pressure on these wet areas. So I might just put that on there in case my hand does rest too heavily. So I think these are going to bleed through far quicker than what the wash did. The ink is quite wet, it is quite deeply coloured. So once again, the difference between the colour working with it direct as a marker like this versus the washing it with water, diluting it with water and doing it as a wash on the page is quite marked. So you can see it's gone through straight away, and here it's gone through where I had that jelly roll metallic that I scrubbed at has gone through. Up here where I've done several coats there without waiting it for it to dry has gone through. But that still to me is not unworkable on the other page. So if we limit how much more we bleed through, that can still be quite workable, I think. So given that these are going to bleed through incredibly when they're used direct as a pen, I'm going to switch to the Crayola Super Tips in the pastel range, and I'm going to use some of those for introducing colour into these detailed areas. Now I have been pretty vocal and gung-ho with colouring with the Super Tips as a watercolour wash recently, but I haven't forgotten that yes, you can colour directly onto a page with a marker, and it doesn't need all of that other stuff to happen. So this pastel set has got some really pretty light colours that you're going to have to work pretty hard at getting these to bleed through the paper and make a big impact on the page behind. Actually, I'll use that again up here. It's very pretty, very delicate. So if you're looking for a marker that you can use for colouring, not have significant bleed through, the Crayola pastel range might be what you're looking for. So these are like little mandalas, little Zen doodle mandalas that are on these animals, and they are very small and very fine details. I'm just using a combination of those greens to tie in with the bluey green idea of water around this whale. And I think I will stick to this set. The trouble I have with a lot of these mandala sort of Zen doodle type designs is that I start to introduce far too many colours and the composition becomes very disjointed and very busy and messy, and I get really not disappointed but disheartened with the results, I guess. Now, some of those are really fine details, so what I'm going to do is allow those colours to go over the lines and blend a little bit, and then I'm going to introduce some metallic gel pen at the end, I think. That tip has broken off. Not quite sure how that has happened. In fact, I don't recall using this marker yet. I might actually try some of these lighter colours in the Staedtler pens. We should be able to get away with those not bleeding through. I have little bits of lint. Now, if you're going to bring your markers back in over the top like this, do make sure that your paper is completely dry, or you are going to have some accidents with bleeding. It does need to be completely dry before you work back into those sorts of areas. And these Staedtler double-ended fibretip pens, sometimes if you hold the point of the tip down for too long, it's like they flood. So keep that in mind as well, especially with those fine tips. Not so much with these bigger tips, but the fine tips I find that if you hold the nib to the paper for too long, it just floods out and you end up with it bleeding over lines and so on. I think we might be dry enough to do some of these areas. Now this fine tip on the Staedtler markers is very good for dotting as well. If you decide that you want to do some colour blending by doing lots of dots, I find these pens work for that method quite well. And you can also do that sort of visual blend without having the marker too heavy and bleeding through the paper. So I think once you get used to them, they are quite a versatile marker to have in your collection. And indeed, for a while there, these and the Faber-Castell connector pens were all I had for markers for a while. And then I got into that thinking of, you know, more sets means more colours, which means more variety. But what I discovered, in fact, was that a lot of the sets actually just had the same colours in over and over and over. Didn't matter which sort of markers you bought, which company you bought them from. They all tended to have very similar colour choices in the end, and you know, I ended up with a big marker collection but still not a huge variety of colours. It was a bit frustrating. Let's just do the door in that colour for simplicity's sake. And then I think what I'll do is just bring in some metallic colours. What did I do with that blue one? There it is. And generally with these metallic pens, I find that in real life you see the shine and the metallicness of them, no problem, but they don't photograph well, so it will not show up terribly well on photographs or video. But in real life, it will hopefully bring in a little bit of shine and sparkle in here. I might bring in some gold and silver. A little bit of gold on the roof of the structure here. I'm guessing it's some sort of little house. And we'll do a bit of gold there. I'm not sure if this point will be too big, but I can reinstate a little bit of white. It's quite a big tip on this particular pen that I have. So I might just leave some of these little bubbles or circles as white. The fish I'm going to do as gold. It's quite fine line work in this book. So if you worry about going over the lines, you might feel a reasonable amount of stress with this book because it have very fine lines, and I'm accepting that the materials I'm using are hard pressed to stay in these lines. I'm also going to do that on these little suggestions of leaves of some description. And where we have these circles and they're out of the water, I'm going to actually do them like this metallic aqua. So where they're surrounded by colour, I'm going to leave them white, but the areas where they didn't have a lot of colour, they're going to be in that metallic pen. And I've missed a couple of little fish. And that dark blue metallic, before I do anything and cover it up, I'll just show you. So this dark blue metallic here, where I use the water on it, you can see it's not really made anything shiny around it. It just diluted the intensity of the colour and it's left some shine there. So yes, it can be diluted with water, but you know, to what effect it actually causes or what value it gives, I don't really know at this stage. I haven't experimented enough with it to know. But if you have got glitter markers and they're water-based, by all means, you could possibly play with them and see what you come up with. So I'm just going to do that like a bit of a metallic stripe on him. just for a bit of variety and a bit of shine. And I think we might put some of that into these dots. So I think I'm coming up for less than an hour on this page so far. Just make sure I don't smudge all this. And I think I'll bring some more colour into here in the front of the whale. So I'm just going to bring some of these minty, sort of spearminty, bluey greens. Just bring some of that into here. And if you heard that, that is a sleepy dog groaning. And I feel like I want some of that a little bit stronger down here. So not only can you wet the paper first and drop the colour into it and flood the paper that way with colour, which is usually a bit more of a gentle colour. You can certainly put your colour onto the plate, lift it up with the damp brush and then work directly onto dry paper, and you'll get a little bit more of a vibrant colour working that way. So where I use that Neo Colour 2 up here, it's given the page a little bit of extra tooth. So that's what makes the Neo Colours great for using as a base, Neo Colour 2 as a base, and then putting your coloured pencil on top, because if you've had extra smooth paper and then you add that on, you get a nice little bit of tooth. And by tooth, what I mean is texture. It gives the surface of the paper a rougher feeling, and then your pencils have something to grab onto, and it can really speed up your colouring time, and you can also get some nice intense colour because you able to get, you know, like a thicker layer of pencil down. It really grabs it, but what that also means is if your pencils are precious to you, you will use them up quicker that way. Because if you imagine running a pencil tip over a sheet of sandpaper, even, you know, like a fine sandpaper, that's what's happening to your pencil when you've got more of a textured tooth to your paper. The pencil grabs to it better and it gets stuck in the little peaks and valleys of the paper that have been made a little bit rougher, and it's essentially like a very fine grade sandpaper that will eat your pencils up a lot quicker. So keep that in mind if your pencils are expensive ones, but it makes it a really good technique to use with your budget pencils that you don't mind you know, if you go, you burn through them quicker. And it's also good, you know, if you've got something like a Crayola pencil that's really hard and you've been struggling with it on smoother paper and you don't quite know what to do with them, putting a base of something like that down and then your Crayola over the top of them can sometimes be a lot easier on your hands to work with. So I actually might let that dry. I'll add a little bit of, tiny bit of coloured pencil to some of these deeper blue areas, I think. I could use the marker and keep going with the marker, but it's going to bleed through. So if I use a little bit of coloured pencil, it will stop that bleed through. But I didn't have a lot of bleed through on this side, surprisingly, given the amount of water that I added on there. I'm quite pleasantly surprised by that. It has wrinkled the paper up a bit, and I expected that too, because when I tried water on it, this page at the back here, it did do that, but then I think I might have ironed that page. So I'll just add a little bit of pencil. And I have Artex here with the Prismacolors and a few Polychromos, a few Jazz Art and a few Lyra Rembrandt. And in fact the Lyra Rembrandt, I've got this one called, oh that's night green, I thought it was a blue. Looks very blue to me. It's called Night Green. Let's see what the Lyra Rembrandt are like. I tend to use Artex all the time. This paper is still a bit damp, so it's not working very well where the paper is damp. It's drier down here. So again, I don't want to cover up all my watercolour style washes. I just really want to deepen bits of colour and enhance some areas. At this point, it's not about covering. If I'd made some terrible errors, then you could attempt to cover them up with your coloured pencils, but this is purely just to add a little bit of interest. This is a Lyra Rembrandt in Aquamarine. That's still wet there. These are an interesting pencil. They feel quite dry, a little bit scratchy, and they feel quite, they're leaving quite textured marks over the Neo Colour 2 here. Not unpleasant, but they're not going to be the sort of pencil that you might use in every single book and always get the result that you want from them. I just bought a couple open stock to try them because I was curious. I was at an art store and they had quite a decent supply of open stock pencils of various brands. And I can't remember what I paid for them per pencil, but I don't think they were the most expensive. They also weren't the cheapest, but on what I'm discovering using them this way is that I don't think I want to invest in a full set of them. I think there are other pencils that I enjoy working with and get nicer results with than these ones. But that could just be the particular paper that I've been working on with them so far. And I've mentioned before, when you've got these blooms of colour and then you get the hard edge where the pigment has been pushed out to the edge, sometimes it can be interesting to add a little coloured pencil to those hard edges and exploit the patterns and the effects that you have there. Sometimes that can be nice to just actually, you don't need a lot, you just need a little bit of pencil over there just to sort of make a bit of a feature of that has happened. True watercolourists didn't used to like that, and in an artwork it's probably far less desirable, but as a fun effect as a colourist in a colouring book, I like it a lot. And I've also got peacock blue here. So I think that will do. That's a quick little colour. It's not a big book. Let's see if I've got a ruler here. This book is 22.5 centimetres by 25 centimetres. Or, I don't have inches on this ruler, I'm sorry. So, yeah, 22.5 centimetres wide approximately by 25 high. So almost a square. If I show you compared to an R.J. Hampson book, it's a little bit wider and quite a bit shorter. That is a page that I've done in coloured pencil. So here we go. Let's do our best to try and show you some of that shine. We've got lots of hard edges, you know, bleeding, what I would call bloom, like a bloom effect there. If you remember, I dropped some clean water into there and it's pushed all the pigment out. This is quite interesting down here. The colours have separated a little bit. So there we go. That's a very quick page of an hour or so, and I used the Staedtler double-ended fibretip pens. A set of 72 there. I only used, sorry, I just had something roll off the table. I ended up only using a handful of the blues and the bluey greens. I used a few Jelly Roll metallics, a couple of Crayola super tips, and some Lyra Rembrandt pencil. So thank you for watching today. If you're still here with me, I appreciate you watching to the end, and please do let me know if you would like to see a complete flip through of this book, and I will see you in the next video. Bye now.